Hello, welcome to AFRITALES by Moonlight. Please show us some love by subscribing to our channel, leaving a comment, giving us a like, and sharing with your friends. Your support truly means the world to us. Thank you. Mama Rehema had just finished her evening shift as a school cleaner in the outskirts of Nairobi. Her body ached from mopping endless corridors, and her hands were calloused from scrubbing chalkboards that bore the dusty residue of the day's lessons. Yet she never complained. Life had been far from kind to her. She had outlived her husband and her own children, and now, at nearly 70, she survived on meager wages that barely kept a roof over her head. That night, the moon was hidden behind thick clouds. Rain threatened, but so far, only a light drizzle fell. Mama Rehema wore a tattered shawl over her shoulders to keep warm as she made her way through the market, deserted at such a late hour. The stalls, which bustled with vendors hawking fruits and spices during the day, were now eerily silent. Suddenly, she heard a faint crying sound. It was soft at first, a feeble whimper that might have been mistaken for a cat's meow. Mama Rehema paused, her heart kicking up a beat. The crying grew louder, echoing off the closed wooden stalls. Clutching her shawl closer, she followed the sound, her eyes scanning the ground. Behind a stack of empty crates, she saw him, a tiny baby bundled in a torn cloth, limbs trembling from the cold. The baby's face was scrunched in a heartbreaking expression, tears streaming from eyes that struggled to stay open. A wave of shock went through her body. She knelt down, carefully lifting the baby into her arms. He was cold to the touch, and his shallow breathing sent panic through her veins. "Oh, my sweet child, who would do this?" she murmured, voice shaking with concern. The baby's only response was another soft cry. Mama Rehema felt tears prick her own eyes. She glanced around the empty market, half expecting someone to appear and claim the child. But the silence spoke volumes. There was nobody. She was alone with this fragile life in her hands. Despite her meager possessions, Mama Rehema knew she had no choice but to care for him. She cradled the baby against her chest, wrapping her threadbare shawl around him. Though she had so little, her heart was open and warm, and in that moment, she made an unspoken promise to protect him as long as she lived. When she got home, her single-room shack with walls made of corrugated iron sheets, she lit a small kerosene lamp. The flickering light danced upon the baby's face, revealing just how malnourished and weak he was. She felt a crushing sense of responsibility but also a surge of determined love. Pulling out a battered notebook and a pen, she scribbled the date. "I found him tonight," she whispered to herself. "He is my blessing." She wrote the name, Baraka, a Swahili word for blessing. If it was the only thing she could give him, she would at least give him a name that carried hope. For hours, she held Baraka close, rocking him gently to keep him warm. Every so often, she hummed the lullabies she used to sing to her own children. Outside, the drizzle turned into a downpour, but Mama Rehema felt a deep calm descend upon her. Rain was often seen as a sign of God's cleansing, and as she fed the baby bits of softened ugali she managed to scrap together, she vowed to love him with what little she had. At dawn, Baraka finally fell into a peaceful sleep. Exhausted but resolute, Mama Rehema kissed his forehead. She didn't know how she would afford another mouth to feed or where tomorrow's meal would come from. But none of that mattered at that moment. The only thing that mattered was that Baraka had survived another night, and that, with her love and care, he would survive many more to come. In the weeks that followed, life in Mama Rehema's cramped shack became a careful dance of sacrifice and survival. By day, she continued her job at the local primary school. Every morning, she rose before sunrise to cook a small portion of porridge. She would sip half a cup while giving the rest to Baraka, even though the baby could only take a few spoonfuls. Any leftover went into a battered tin for her lunch, if she was lucky enough to have a break. Mama Rehema's neighborhood was a sprawling informal settlement on the outskirts of Nairobi. The maze of tin-roofed dwellings stood on muddy lanes, and communal water taps often ran dry. The area was rife with petty crime and despair, yet it was also a tapestry of resilience. Neighbors who had almost nothing still shared what little they had. But some were less kind. One afternoon, Mama Rehema overheard a group of gossiping women near the communal water pump. "Have you seen that old cleaner's new baby?" one sneered, loud enough for Mama Rehema to hear. "He's nothing but a charity case," added another. "I heard she found him in the trash. Calls him Baraka." "Hey, what a joke, trash baby is more like it." There was a cruel round of laughter. Mama Rehema felt her face burn. Clutching her water container, she forced herself to walk away. She refused to let their words poison her heart. She knew what she'd heard in that abandoned stall. She knew the heartbreak in the baby's eyes. And she knew that he was a gift she couldn't turn away. Despite her resolve, money grew tighter. Each day, she counted her coins to see if she could afford milk for Baraka. Sometimes she went to bed hungry, stomach knotted with pangs of emptiness. But when she peeked over at Baraka sleeping peacefully on her thin mattress, she found the strength to carry on. Eventually, the school's headmistress, Mrs. McKenna, noticed Mama Rehema's exhaustion. One evening, as Mama Rehema was finishing her cleaning duties, Mrs. McKenna approached her. "Mama Rehema, you look pale," she said gently, placing a hand on the older woman's shoulder. "Is everything all right?" Mama Rehema offered a small smile. "All is well, madam. Just a bit tired. I have a child now." The headmistress's eyebrows lifted in surprise. "A child?" she echoed, her voice laced with concern. With hesitant words, Mama Rehema explained how she found Baraka. She didn't dwell on the hunger or the ridicule, only on her determination to care for him. Mrs. McKenna listened intently, nodding. "You have a heart of gold, Mama Rehema," she said softly. "If you need anything, formula, maybe some extra food, please let me know." Mama Rehema's eyes misted with gratitude, but she politely declined. She already felt she owed so much to this school that allowed her to earn a modest living. She didn't want charity unless it was absolutely necessary. At home, she continued to juggle her responsibilities. Baraka's presence added warmth to the tiny shack. Despite the taunts, some neighbors, especially the older women, would drop by occasionally with small gifts, a few sweet potatoes or a handful of beans. The older women understood the pain and sacrifice of motherhood, and they admired Mama Rehema's compassion. In the evenings, after washing the day's clothes for a little extra money, she would cradle Baraka and sing him lullabies. Sometimes, her voice wavered with fatigue, but the baby's eyes sparkled when he heard her. It was as if he understood he was loved, deeply and unconditionally. "Baraka," she would whisper, kissing his forehead. "You are my blessing indeed. One day, you will grow to be strong and kind. Remember that you were loved from the moment I found you." Though her hands trembled from long hours of work and her stomach often went empty, Mama Rehema's spirit glowed with the simple joy of motherhood. Even if the world saw her as just a poor cleaner, she saw herself as something more, a guardian of hope. Time flew by, and before she knew it, Baraka was old enough to begin school. He was a bright, inquisitive child, always asking questions about the world around him. Even at a young age, he sensed Mama Rehema's struggles, her weary sighs at the end of the month when money for rent and food ran short, the way she clutched him protectively whenever neighborhood kids teased him for being trash baby. But Mama Rehema insisted on enrolling him in the local public primary school. Education, she believed, was the one thing that could change the path of a child born into poverty. On Baraka's first day of school, she woke up extra early to iron his uniform. The uniform was second-hand, slightly faded and patched in places, but clean. She lovingly polished his worn shoes, determined that he looked presentable. At school, Baraka's excitement was quickly dampened by snide comments from classmates. They heard rumors about his unknown parentage and teased him relentlessly for having an older grandmother figure as his sole caretaker. During lunch, some children formed a circle around him, chanting, "Trash baby! Trash baby!" until he ran to hide in a corner, tears in his eyes. One afternoon, he returned home in tears. "Grandma," he began, using the affectionate term he had adopted for Mama Rehema, "why do they hate me so much? Why do they call me trash?" Mama Rehema's heart clenched. She pulled him into a tight hug. "They're ignorant, my boy. You are not trash, you're my Baraka, my blessing." "But it hurts," he sobbed, burying his face in her shawl. "I don't want to go back." Mama Rehema pressed her lips together, pondering how to protect Baraka from a world that judged him so harshly. "We must be strong," she said finally. "And if it becomes too much, we'll find another way." His tears sparked her resolve. She began saving every coin she could spare, cutting back on her meals even more. While Baraka slept, she'd pore over her finances on a small, battered notebook by candlelight. 2, 3, 4 months passed, and she managed to scrape together enough money to pay the deposit for a private academy across town, one that had better resources and a reputation for discipline and academic excellence. When she told Baraka the news, his eyes lit up. "Really? A new school?" he asked, as if hardly believing it. Mama Rehema nodded, smiling through the ache in her chest at how much extra work this would demand of her. "You deserve a place where you can learn without fear." "But can we afford it?" he asked, worry creasing his young brow. Mama Rehema simply ruffled his hair, giving a reassuring nod. She didn't mention the houses she had started cleaning on weekends or the clothes she now washed late into the night. She didn't mention how she would have to go without lunch most days. All that mattered was Baraka's happiness and future. When the day came for him to start at the new school, she accompanied him, holding his hand tightly. The academy was larger and more modern than the public school, its gates guarded by a uniformed security guard. Mama Rehema's heart pounded, but she kept her head high. "Hello," she said to the receptionist, her voice wavering slightly. "This is my grandson, Baraka. He'll be studying here." They completed the registration, and Baraka disappeared into a classroom of neat desks and polished floors. As Mama Rehema left, she silently prayed. "May this place be kinder to him," she whispered to herself. "May he never again feel like trash." Yet in Baraka's eyes, this new environment was both a blessing and a burden. He quickly sensed that many of his new classmates came from wealthy families. Their uniforms were crisp, their shoes brand new. He was painfully aware of the sacrifices Mama Rehema made to pay for his schooling, and while he was grateful, he also felt something unfamiliar bubbling within him, a deep sense of shame about where he came from. Baraka settled into the private academy with an almost desperate zeal. He devoured his textbooks, volunteered in class discussions, and soon became a star student, always at the top of every test. Teachers praised his diligence, classmates marveled at his intelligence. But beneath his academic success lay a growing self-consciousness about his humble origins. He began noticing the stark difference between his life and that of his new friends. They arrived in sleek cars driven by chauffeurs, flaunted the latest phones and gadgets, and wore designer shoes. Their talk revolved around weekend trips abroad or exclusive club memberships. Baraka listened, fascinated yet uneasy. He worried that if they knew about his single-room shack or Mama Rehema's cleaning jobs, they'd laugh at him, or worse, pity him. "Hey, Baraka, where do you live?" a boy named Sam once asked during lunch. Baraka froze. Somewhere near the city center," he lied awkwardly. "My parents are abroad, so I'm staying with a guardian." Sam shrugged, accepting the vague explanation. But Baraka felt his stomach twist. That evening, as he walked back to his real home, a long commute by matatu and then by foot, he felt the weight of his deception. Over time, he refined his story. He told people his guardian was a distant relative in diplomacy, stationed overseas, who sent money for his education. When pressed for details, he'd shrug and change the subject. The more he repeated the lie, the easier it became. He avoided inviting anyone over, making excuses about renovations or that his guardian was very private. At first, Mama Rehema didn't know about the web of fabrications he spun at school. She only knew that Baraka was thriving academically and seemed less troubled by bullying. One day, though, she caught a glimpse of Baraka's new social status in a way that stung. She had come to pick him up from school to attend a family friend's funeral on the other side of town. When she arrived, the students were spilling out of their last class. Baraka was laughing with a group of well-dressed classmates, girls in stylish braids, boys wearing polished shoes. Spotting Mama Rehema, he hesitated. For a moment, a flicker of shame clouded his features. Then he plastered on a forced smile. "Baraka, who's that?" one girl in the group asked, glancing at Mama Rehema suspiciously. "Oh, that's my guardian's house help," Baraka stammered, voice tight. "She's here to pick me up for an errand." Mama Rehema's stomach dropped. She had heard him clearly. House help? The group barely acknowledged her, turning back to talk among themselves. Baraka quickly ushered her away, avoiding her gaze. They walked in silence until they reached the bus stop. Mama Rehema's eyes stung with tears she refused to shed in public. She understood that Baraka was embarrassed, but she couldn't help the ache in her heart. Once they were on the bus, she cleared her throat. "I thought you might be proud to introduce me," she said softly, her tone betraying her hurt. Baraka's eyes darted around. I'm sorry, Gogo," he murmured, using a Swahili term for grandmother. "They wouldn't understand. It's complicated." She nodded, staring out the window as the Nairobi skyline appeared in the distance. She fought the urge to scold him. She couldn't bear to add guilt to whatever insecurities churned inside him. Yet for the first time, a pang of fear took root in her heart. Was she losing him? Despite this painful incident, Mama Rehema continued to sacrifice for him. She worked extra jobs, cleaning wealthy homes after her school shift, her knees swelling from kneeling on cold tiles. Each month, she scrambled to pay Baraka's tuition fees. In her mind, nothing mattered more than his future. Baraka, for his part, became adept at navigating two worlds. By day, he mingled with the affluent, shaping an identity that was far removed from the cramped shack he called home. By night, he returned to Mama Rehema, guilt gnawing at him, yet comforted by her familiar lullabies and gentle spirit. He felt torn, haunted by the knowledge that Mama Rehema had given up everything for him, even as he pretended she hardly existed in front of his peers. It was a life he didn't choose, but one he had carefully crafted, a lie that had become his fragile shield against the judgments of a world he so desperately wanted to be part of. Baraka's academic prowess earned him a much-coveted scholarship to one of Nairobi's elite universities. On the day the acceptance letter arrived, Mama Rehema was almost delirious with joy, hugging him and dancing in their tiny living space. She proudly showed the letter to anyone who would look, beaming as though she had personally scaled a mountain. For Baraka, this felt like his golden ticket, a chance to finally stand shoulder to shoulder with the privileged. The university, situated near Nairobi's lush suburbs, boasted state-of-the-art facilities. Students from the upper echelons of society roamed its halls, wearing the latest fashions, discussing global travels, and networking for future business ventures. Determined not to appear out of place, Baraka asked Mama Rehema to help him upgrade his wardrobe and buy a decent laptop. She had little left in savings, but she sold nearly everything of value she still possessed, her late husband's tools, a vintage sewing machine, even her only decent piece of jewelry, a simple gold band inherited from her mother. When Baraka started classes, he was no longer the timid boy from the slums. He carried himself with an air of confidence. His intelligence caught the eye of professors, and his charm ingratiated him with many of the students. Soon, he was invited to house parties in upscale neighborhoods, where high walls encircled manicured lawns and security guards stood at the gates. That's where he met Aisha, the daughter of a prominent business mogul. She was elegant, articulate, and adventurous, always regaling friends with tales of her summer vacations in Dubai or skiing in the Alps. Baraka was captivated by her worldliness. To keep up, he spun stories of his own, hinting at exotic relatives and posh family connections. The deeper he fell into Aisha's circle, the more elaborate his fabrications grew. Their relationship blossomed. She was drawn to his sharp mind and gentlemanly demeanor. He relished her laughter, her wide-eyed fascination whenever he told a carefully curated anecdote about his globe-trotting guardian. Meanwhile, Mama Rehema remained in the background, working late nights, her fragile body pushing to its limits just to send him a bit more money if he needed it. Whenever Mama Rehema visited him on campus, usually carrying a container of homemade food, Baraka made sure to meet her in a quiet, secluded spot. He'd quickly take the food, hugging her briefly, glancing around to ensure no one noticed. "You didn't have to bring so much," he'd say, even though he'd devour her cooking later with relish. Mama Rehema would smile. "I wanted to see you. You've been busy with classes, and I miss you." He mumbled a hasty apology. "I'm sorry, go. University life is hectic. I promise I'll visit soon." But he rarely did. The double life he'd built, scholar by day, socialite by night, left little room for the truth. At times, the weight of it was suffocating, and he found himself awake at night, staring at the ceiling of his dorm room, recalling the memory of Mama Rehema's gentle lullabies. But the next morning, he'd dress in his best clothes, greet Aisha with a confident smile, and push his guilt deeper down. By the end of his first year, Baraka was firmly established among the university's elite circles. He joined leadership clubs, worked part-time as a research assistant, and was on the fast track to a successful career. Professors predicted he would become a game-changer in whatever field he chose, perhaps politics, law, or finance. Yet the more people lauded him, the more he felt the sting of hypocrisy. The truth about Mama Rehema's background, it loomed over him like a ghost, ready to break through his carefully constructed facade at any moment. One evening, as he sipped a latte at a trendy cafe near campus with Aisha, she suddenly leaned in. "My father wants to meet you," she said excitedly. "He's impressed by your academic awards. Maybe there's an internship at his company for you." Baraka swallowed hard, forcing a smile. That's incredible," he said, though worry danced in his mind. How long could he maintain this charade? Still, he was too far in, too used to the privileges it brought him. Soon after, wedding bells began to chime in the distance. Aisha's parents liked him, admired his ambition and intelligence. Rumors flew around campus that Baraka was about to propose. He couldn't deny that the idea thrilled him. Marrying into a wealthy, influential family would finally cement his place among Nairobi's elite. But beneath that excitement, an unspoken dread festered. Mama Rehema was still out there, living in near poverty, hoping each day for a call or a visit. and the day she would collide with his new life felt increasingly inevitable. Years went by, and Baraka graduated with honors. He secured a lucrative position at a multinational company, climbing the corporate ladder with the same relentless drive that had propelled him academically. Aisha, now his fiancée, was proud to stand by his side at charity galas and corporate events, where he charmed CEOs and politicians alike. He possessed a self-assuredness that came from years of masking his humble roots and projecting an image of polished sophistication. Meanwhile, Mama Rehema grew older. She seldom heard from Baraka, except for occasional phone calls that lasted only minutes. He always seemed rushed, promising to send money or visit when things calmed down. Deep down, she understood that his world had expanded far beyond their cramped shack, but she still prayed for him every night, lighting a small candle and asking for his continued success. Her health deteriorated slowly, aches in her joints, a persistent cough she tried to ignore. Still, she refused to trouble Baraka. She told herself he was busy building a life, and that a mother's role was to support from afar. "He'll come when he can," she repeated, trying to suppress the loneliness that gnawed at her. One day, fueled by longing, Mama Rehema decided to visit Baraka unannounced. She had saved some money for the bus ride into the more affluent part of Nairobi where he lived. She even spent 2 days washing extra clothes to buy a small cake, a celebratory gesture to congratulate him on his latest promotion, which she had read about in a newspaper snippet. Baraka's new apartment was in a gated complex, each unit modern and spacious. The security guard eyed Mama Rehema skeptically when she arrived, noticing her well-worn clothes and weathered face. She nervously clutched her plastic bag containing the cake. "I'm here to see my grandson, Baraka," she said quietly, giving his full name. After a brief phone call to confirm she wasn't a vagrant, the guard let her through. She climbed the polished marble steps, heart pounding, excitement intermingled with apprehension. At the door, she could hear laughter and chatter from within. A wave of nerves swept over her. She had never seen Baraka's new life up close. She knocked gently. The door swung open, and Baraka stood there with a group of elegantly dressed people behind him. Mama Rehema's face lit up. "My boy," she exclaimed, voice trembling with joy. "I've come to see you." Baraka froze, color draining from his face. In that split second, she saw confusion and fear in his eyes. His fiancée and her parents were seated in the living room, casually sipping champagne. His future father-in-law was in mid-sentence, discussing potential business deals, when Mama Rehema's arrival brought everything to a halt. Hi," Baraka muttered, hurriedly stepping out into the hallway and pulling the door behind him so no one inside could see her. "Gogo, what are you doing here?" he hissed, voice laced with panic. She held out the plastic bag with the cake, smiling hesitantly. "I just wanted to surprise you. To see your new place, and to meet your fiancé," she added, her voice quivering. His eyes flickered with guilt. He glanced back at the partially closed door. Then, as if steeling himself, he opened it again and led her inside. The chatter in the room died instantly. All eyes fell on the frail old woman dressed in faded fabric and run-down shoes. Aisha's mother raised a perfectly groomed eyebrow. "Baraka, dear, who is this?" she asked politely, though her tone carried an undercurrent of judgment. Baraka's heart pounded. He could feel sweat forming on his brow. Seconds felt like hours as he wrestled with what to say. Fear of being exposed warred with the memory of how Mama Rehema had nurtured him. Finally, in a voice tight with anxiety, the words tumbled out, "She's just the cleaner, from our old family home." Silence gripped the room. Mama Rehema stood rooted to the spot, the plastic bag slipping from her hand. The small cake tumbled out, breaking on the polished floor. Her eyes brimmed with tears. She had heard the words clearly. Aisha's mother offered a thin smile. "Oh, how sweet. She must be very loyal to you. Why don't you ask her to leave the cake in the kitchen?" Baraka's gaze darted to Mama Rehema's trembling hands. He wanted to say something else, to tell them all that she was the one who sacrificed everything for him. But his throat seized. Pride and shame held him hostage. Mama Rehema felt her heart shatter. For a moment, she locked eyes with him, silently pleading for some acknowledgement, some sign that all these years of love and sacrifice had meant something. But Baraka remained frozen, his face a mask of panic and regret. With trembling dignity, she picked up the damaged cake, placed it back in the bag, and bowed her head. "I'm sorry to have bothered you," she whispered, her voice cracking. No one moved or spoke to stop her as she turned and walked out of the apartment, leaving behind an excruciating tension that no one knew how to dispel. In the corridor, she paused, pressing her back against the wall as tears she had held at bay flowed freely. She clung to the railing, feeling the sharp sting of betrayal. Slowly, step by step, she made her way down the stairs and out onto the street, her heart heavy with a grief only a mother who has lost her child could understand. Mama Rehema drifted through the bustling streets of Nairobi in a daze, each footstep a stab of pain. Her normally meticulous posture was stooped, as though the weight of Baraka's rejection had physically bent her. She had long daydreamed of this moment, meeting her grandson's fiancé, celebrating his accomplishments. Never had she imagined he would introduce her as just a cleaner. As the sky dimmed into a hazy twilight, her head spun from hunger and heartbreak. The city lights blurred. She nearly stumbled off the curb, narrowly avoiding an oncoming car. Drivers honked, but she barely registered the noise. A wave of dizziness overcame her, and she felt her vision blacken at the edges. She remembered stepping onto the pavement and then the roaring of a motorcycle engine. Suddenly, pain shot through her body as something collided with her. She was thrown forward, landing hard on the asphalt. The taste of blood filled her mouth. Street vendors shouted, bystanders rushed over. That was when Lulu appeared, a refined woman in her late 40s, stepping out of her sleek car with urgency. Lulu had just finished a humanitarian meeting nearby when she witnessed the accident. She hurried to where Mama Rehema lay, gently pushing aside curious onlookers. Give her some space, Lulu commanded, voice calm yet authoritative. Someone call an ambulance. Mama Rehema's eyes fluttered open, her vision hazy. She felt a gentle hand cup her cheek. Stay with me, Mama. You're going to be okay, Lulu whispered. The ride to the hospital was a blur of sirens and hushed voices. Once inside, doctors ran tests, bandaging her wounds and setting up 4 lines. Lulu stayed by her side, answering questions when Mama Rehema's responses became incoherent. The final diagnosis included head trauma, bruised ribs, and a deep laceration on her forearm. After hours of treatment, a tired-looking doctor approached Lulu. She's stable, but there's concern about a possible concussion and memory loss. We'll keep her for observation. Lulu nodded, relief flooding her features. She had already informed the police of the accident, but no one had come forward claiming the injured woman. Lulu tried to ask Mama Rehema for contact information, but each time she did, the old woman stared blankly and gave disjointed answers. She remembered a name, Baraka, but no phone number, no address. She must have family, Lulu muttered to herself. She scanned Mama Rehema's belongings, a worn shawl, a few coins in a pocket, and the remnants of a broken cake. Nothing that could identify her beyond her first name, Rehema. Over the next couple of days, Mama Rehema slipped in and out of consciousness. Sometimes, she cried out Baraka's name. Other times, she was silent, staring at the ceiling as though searching for a piece of herself that had gone missing. Each time Lulu came to visit, she brought a thermos of hot soup and soft bread, coaxing Mama Rehema to eat. There was a gentleness in Lulu's eyes, a genuine warmth that transcended mere pity. On the 3rd day, the doctor announced that while Mama Rehema's physical wounds were healing, she appeared to have partial amnesia. She can't recall critical details about her life. Her memory might return gradually or it might not, depending on how her brain heals. She'll need rest and a stress-free environment. Lulu felt a wave of compassion for the fragile woman lying in the hospital bed. Though they were strangers, Lulu sensed a profound bond forming. She simply could not abandon her. She remembered her own mother's struggles in raising her, how an unexpected benefactor had once rescued them from the brink of poverty. It felt like karma, or maybe destiny, that now she had the chance to help someone in need. Doctor, Lulu said, pressing her lips into a determined line. I'll take her to my home once she's discharged. I'll make sure she has care and anything else she needs. The doctor nodded, relieved. She's fortunate to have found you. Little did Lulu know just how intertwined their destinies were about to become, how caring for Mama Rehema would not only heal an old woman's fractured soul but also expose the emotional wounds of a man who had forgotten where he came from. Lulu's home was a haven of tranquility. Located a short drive from the heart of Nairobi, it stood behind a tall gate and high walls, yet every inch of the compound exuded warmth and compassion. A single-story bungalow and a small guest cottage were nestled among mango trees and blooming flowers. Children's laughter often echoed in the courtyard, for Lulu ran a modest orphanage in one wing of the property. When Mama Rehema arrived, she was still weak, her steps wobbly. Lulu guided her gently into the living area, where plush sofas and vibrant African textiles welcomed her. At first, Mama Rehema's eyes flickered with confusion. She had no recollection of ever stepping foot in such a beautiful space. Welcome, Lulu said, smiling softly. This will be your home, for as long as you need. Mama Rehema blinked, tears threatening to spill from her tired eyes. She felt an odd mixture of gratitude and displacement. Everything was unfamiliar, even her own memories evaded her. She could recall a name, Baraka, but beyond flashes of a young boy's face, the rest remained shrouded in darkness. Days turned into weeks, and Lulu's staff embraced Mama Rehema as one of their own. They called her Mama a playful spin on her name. Despite her age and frailty, Mama Rehema insisted on helping in small ways, peeling vegetables in the kitchen or folding laundry for the orphanage children. Each act gave her a sense of purpose she desperately needed. Yet her amnesia lingered. The doctor had advised Lulu to avoid overwhelming her with direct questions or references to her past, as it might cause anxiety or further confusion. So Lulu kept their conversations light, focusing on the present. "It's like we're living in two worlds, yours and mine," Lulu told Mama Rehema one afternoon. "But hopefully we can meet in the middle." Mama Rehema nodded, smiling faintly. She didn't know how to put into words the ache she felt, like a piece of her heart was missing. At times, her hand would unconsciously go to her chest, as though searching for something. In the orphanage wing, children of all ages roamed freely, playing and chattering. Mama Rehema was drawn to them. She would sit on a low stool, and soon the kids would circle around her, enchanted by her gentle manner. Even with her fractured memory, she exuded a maternal warmth that soothed them. She told them simple stories she half remembered, about a child named Baraka who was found under mysterious circumstances, about lullabies and love. The children listened, eyes wide. Lulu watched from a distance, amazed. In Mama Rehema, she saw a radiant kindness that transcended suffering. The old woman might not recall her full past, but her soul remained generous and nurturing. Lulu realized she'd found the maternal figure she'd yearned for since her own mother passed away years ago. As Mama Rehema settled into her new routine, Lulu took note of small details. Sometimes, Mama Rehema would hum a lullaby in Swahili, her eyes distant. Other times, she'd handle a broom or mop with astonishing expertise, as though she'd done it all her life. Lulu gently teased her, "You clean better than our housekeepers." Mama Rehema would chuckle in response, though something in her laugh betrayed a hidden sorrow. Occasionally, Lulu pondered how she might locate Mama Rehema's family. She tried asking around for anyone named Baraka, but Nairobi was vast, and Lulu had only a first name, no last name or leads. She even scanned social media forums and local missing person listings. Nothing turned up. Eventually, Lulu decided not to push. Mama Rehema was safe, healthy, and surrounded by children who adored her. Perhaps that was all the closure she needed. Little did Lulu know that fate was quietly working behind the scenes, orchestrating a collision between Mama Rehema's gentle new world and the tormented conscience of the very man she had raised. The months that followed were tumultuous for Baraka. Though he had climbed the corporate ranks and was set to marry Aisha, cracks began to appear in his meticulously fashioned life. His fiancée's parents noticed his reluctance to discuss his childhood or show family photographs. Aisha herself was increasingly curious. She sensed he was hiding something, but each time she tried to pry, he deftly changed the subject or feigned irritation. "Baraka, we're about to start a life together," she said one evening over dinner. "Why can't you trust me with your past?" He sighed, swirling the wine in his glass. "It's complicated, Aisha. It's not something I'm proud of." Her brow creased. "You always say that. But secrets have a way of coming out. I love you, but it feels like I only know part of you." With a forced smile, he assured her he'd tell her everything one day. Secretly, guilt gnawed at him, especially whenever he thought of Mama Rehema's face crumpling as he called her a cleaner. That haunting memory robbed him of sleep, leaving him hollow-eyed and restless. He tried calling her phone a few days after she'd left his apartment, but it was disconnected. Guilt turned to a creeping panic. Had she gone back to the slums? Had she forgiven him? He tried to bury his unease in work, but it stubbornly resurfaced, manifesting in nightmares and a sense of unshakable dread. Even Aisha sensed his restlessness. "Let's do some charity work," she suggested. "It's a great way to reconnect with gratitude." She had no idea just how close her suggestion cut to Baraka's deeply buried shame. One weekend, Aisha asked him to attend a charitable event organized by Lulu, a well-known humanitarian in their social circles. The event aimed to raise funds for an orphanage and community kitchen project. Baraka resisted at first. He wasn't exactly in the mood for a social gathering, but Aisha insisted. "It'll be good for us to do this together," she said. They arrived to find a lively scene, volunteers setting up tables, donors milling around, and children preparing to perform a short skit. Lulu stood at the center, gracefully directing activities. She greeted Aisha and Baraka with a welcoming smile. "Thank you for coming," Lulu said. "We're serving a hot meal to street families later. Feel free to help or mingle." Baraka wandered through the crowd, his mind elsewhere. A line of volunteers handed out plates of food, steaming rice, beans, vegetables. He spotted a frail woman in an apron ladling out soup into bowls. She had a gentle stoop to her posture, her hair wrapped in a neat scarf. His heart skipped a beat, something in her silhouette tugged at his memory. Her face was turned away, but as she shifted slightly, he caught a glimpse of her profile. His breath caught in his throat. It was Mama Rehema. His vision tunneled, everything else seemed to fade. She looked healthier than the last time he'd seen her, a faint smile on her face as she interacted with a small child. Her eyes were kinder, yet distant, as though she existed in another realm. Baraka felt an overwhelming rush of relief and despair all at once. "Mama," he whispered, feet moving of their own accord. He stumbled through the throng of people until he was standing just a few feet away. She turned to face him, an air of calm serenity about her. Their eyes locked. For Baraka, the moment hung suspended in time. Tears pricked at his eyes. He yearned to throw his arms around her, to beg her forgiveness, to promise he would never betray her again. "Go," he choked out, voice barely above a whisper. "It's me. Baraka. I've been looking for you." Mama Rehema regarded him politely. She did not flinch or rush into his arms. Instead, she tilted her head curiously, like someone trying to recall a distant memory. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "Do I know you?" The word struck Baraka like a physical blow. He blinked in confusion, forcing a tight smile. "Go, it's me, Baraka, your grandson. I was the boy you raised, you found me." She looked away, a flicker of sadness crossing her face. "That name, it sounds familiar," she murmured, pressing a hand to her temple as if battling a headache. "I'm sorry, I don't remember." Baraka's heart twisted. He reached out to gently touch her arm. She pulled away, not out of anger, but out of a polite distance that people maintain with strangers. In that moment, Lulu appeared, concern evident in her eyes. She gently guided Mama Rehema aside. "Is something wrong?" Lulu asked, noticing the tears welling up in Baraka's eyes. She's my grandmother," Baraka managed, voice raw. "I hurt her, she disappeared." Lulu looked from him to Mama Rehema in astonishment. "Rehema, do you remember him?" she asked softly. But Mama Rehema shook her head, gazing at Baraka with an apology in her eyes. "I'm sorry, I don't," she repeated. Then, with a small, courteous smile, she turned to continue serving food. Baraka stood rooted to the spot, his entire body trembling. His mother, his savior, had no recollection of him. He fought back sobs as he thought of all the times she had gone hungry to feed him, all the sacrifices she made. Now she was gone from him, in every sense of the word, and it was all his fault. Baraka could not rest until he found a way to restore Mama Rehema's memory. After that shocking encounter at Lulu's charity event, he left in a rush, nearly forgetting Aisha behind. His fiancée was bewildered and hurt by his abrupt departure, but Baraka was consumed by a single imperative: make things right. He reached out to Lulu the next day, practically begging her to let him visit Mama Rehema. Lulu, protective of Mama Rehema's fragile state, was hesitant. "Look, Baraka," she said carefully over the phone, "she's been through a lot. If she truly is your grandmother, I understand your desire to reconnect, but I don't want to push her. The doctor advised us not to bombard her with stressful memories." "Please," Baraka pleaded. "I can't sleep, I can't eat. I need to apologize, to help her remember. I owe her that much." After deliberation, Lulu agreed to a cautious approach. She invited Baraka to dinner at her home, emphasizing that there would be no pressure on Mama Rehema. If she felt comfortable, they could talk. Aisha, overhearing Baraka's phone calls and seeing his torment, insisted on joining him. Even though he had kept many secrets from her, she still loved him and wanted to support him. That evening, Baraka and Aisha arrived just as the sun was setting. The orphanage's courtyard was alive with children playing. Lulu met them at the door, escorting them inside. "She's in the kitchen," Lulu whispered. "She loves helping with meals. Let's see how she reacts to you." With hesitant steps, Baraka entered the airy kitchen, where Mama Rehema stood at a counter, stirring a large pot of soup. She looked up when she heard the footsteps. Their eyes met. He saw a flicker of recognition, just the faintest spark, and his heart lurched. Hello, Mama Rehema, Baraka said softly, using the name she had given herself in the orphanage. His voice trembled. May I help you with that? She blinked, lips parting in uncertainty. I suppose, she managed. Have we met before? Tears threatened to flood his eyes. He carefully took a ladle, stirring the soup in slow, deliberate circles. We have. You used to sing me lullabies when I was a boy, he whispered, voice wavering. You saved me. She frowned, her hand subconsciously reaching for her temple. I'm sorry, my memory. Baraka gently placed a hand on hers. I know. We don't have to force anything. I just want to be near you. Though confusion etched her features, she didn't pull away this time. Something in his voice, or maybe the gentle sadness in his eyes, stirred an echo of familiarity within her. Several days passed in similar encounters. Baraka would stop by, sometimes alone, sometimes with Aisha, always careful not to overwhelm Mama Rehema. He'd bring small tokens, a flower from the bush outside her old shack, a crocheted blanket she had once mended, an old photograph of the two of them when he was a child, but none of it triggered an immediate breakthrough. Still, Lulu noticed that Mama Rehema grew more comfortable around him. There was an unspoken bond neither could deny. Then one afternoon, as Baraka sat quietly in the living room, he overheard a soft melody drifting in from the kitchen. It was a lullaby in Swahili, one that used to lull him to sleep. Baraka's heart skipped. He hurried to the kitchen to see Mama Rehema stirring a pot, humming unconsciously. Without warning, tears brimmed in his eyes. Do you remember that song? He asked, swallowing hard. She paused, the spoon clattering against the side of the pot. Slowly, she turned to him. It's a lullaby, she whispered, voice unsteady. I used to sing it, but I don't remember to whom. Before he could respond, the radio in the corner crackled to life, broadcasting a familiar tune from decades past. The combination, her humming and the radio's music, acted like a key in a lock. Mama Rehema's eyes went wide, her mouth forming an O of shock. She swayed on her feet, clutching the counter for support. Baraka rushed to her side, steadying her. He saw a flood of emotions dance across her face, confusion, realization, heartbreak, and, finally, recognition. She pressed a hand to her mouth, tears leaking down her cheeks. Baraka, she croaked, her voice cracking. My Baraka, oh, God, where have I been? Their arms found each other, and Mama Rehema clung to him as though he might vanish. She sobbed, trembling against his chest. He held her tightly, tears streaming down his own face, murmuring apologies between gasping breaths. I'm sorry, Go-Go. I'm so sorry for everything. Lulu and Aisha, drawn by the commotion, arrived to see the tearful reunion. Mama Rehema pulled back to gaze at Baraka, her eyes full of both love and hurt. You called me a cleaner, she said, her voice quivering. You turned me away. Baraka's face contorted in agony. Yes. I did the unforgivable. I was ashamed of my past, ashamed of being poor, and I hid you. I betrayed you, he confessed, tears streaking his cheeks. I was a coward. Mama Rehema closed her eyes, her shoulders shaking with emotion. My child, you were never trash. You were my blessing. Aisha stood to the side, tears in her own eyes. She grasped the gravity of what Baraka had done, but also the depth of regret he felt now. Lulu approached quietly, laying a comforting hand on Mama Rehema's shoulder. 4 hours, they sat together, sifting through the past. Mama Rehema's memories returned in fragments, her many sacrifices, the day she found him, the nights she went hungry so he could eat. Baraka wept as she recounted the times he'd come home in tears from being bullied, how she used her last coins to send him to the private academy. He realized how thoroughly he had tossed away her love in pursuit of acceptance from a world that valued wealth over character. Yet in that same conversation, Mama Rehema forgave him. Not easily, and not without sorrow, but she forgave him with the unconditional love that had defined their relationship from the start. You're my son, she said, cupping his face in her weathered hands. I cannot hate you, Baraka. But I need you to be better. From that day forth, Baraka vowed to make amends. With Lulu's help and Aisha's support, he began using his connections to start a community kitchen. He channeled his corporate success into a philanthropic project, establishing Mama's Table, named to honor Mama Rehema. It served free meals to underprivileged families in various parts of Nairobi. Lulu donated land adjacent to her orphanage, transforming it into a sprawling kitchen and dining area. Aisha and her family offered initial funding. Word spread, and donations poured in from Baraka's business networks. Volunteers multiplied. And at the head of it all stood Mama Rehema, stirring giant pots of stew, humming lullabies with a serene smile. Though her health remained fragile, she thrived emotionally, surrounded by people who cherished her. She took joy in every spoonful of food handed out, seeing in each hungry face a reflection of the boy she had saved. Baraka also took a hard look at himself. He stepped away from the pretense, telling Aisha's family the truth about his origins. Some looked down on him at first, but he found that the people who genuinely cared stuck around. Aisha, after overcoming her initial shock, supported him wholeheartedly. She told him, "I love you more now that I know where your heart truly lies." In the end, Mama Rehema didn't measure Baraka's success by his corporate title or the wealth he accumulated. She measured it by the integrity he finally displayed, by the line of homeless men, women, and children who found warmth and nourishment at Mama's table. By the way he knelt next to an old woman selling vegetables and bought her entire basket without haggling. By the tears in his eyes whenever he heard that lullaby on the radio, remembering how he had once been rescued from the trash, only to turn around and discard the woman who saved him. Now, he held her hand gently, guiding her through a crowd of grateful souls, showing them that love can redeem even the deepest betrayal. Mama Rehema lived her remaining days proud, content in the knowledge that Baraka was no longer ashamed of her or of himself. He had come full circle, back to the woman who first called him Baraka, back to the love he had spent half his life denying. And in this final redemption, he found peace, finally understanding that true riches lay not in material success but in the simple act of giving back to the hands that once fed you. Please don't forget to subscribe, like, comment your thoughts and share. See you in the next story. AFRITALES by Moonlight.